I just finished harvesting for my cooperative tomorrow where I sell wholesale to florists, and I thought this week would be a fun time to do a video on just how productive could a 40 by 90 foot space be. So I am in my enclosed fenced in area where I grow. I would say that this is a pretty large area for one person to manage. We have 3 acres, but 40 by 90 feet is 3,600 square feet. It's not a lot of space in the grand scheme. It's certainly a lot bigger than an average backyard, but I'm trying to prove a point here, which is basically you don't need a ton of space to output a decent amount of productivity, especially if you're doing this part-time. So we're going to talk about how much I was able to output this week for wholesale. We also have an above average sales week retail wise because I'm selling at a local country store, and I'm also having my premium vase arrangement CSA pickup this week, which we'll go into a little bit more detail because I've had a lot of questions about that from previous videos. So let's do a little bit of housekeeping here. You can see around me that not all of the field is in current production. A lot of it is, I would estimate about like 65-70% is in production. The other like 35%-ish is either just completely clear because last year I got a little bit too overwhelmed with this amount of space, so I pulled back a little bit, or things are just being ready to be ripped out. Like you can see in the back over there, I actually have some cosmos that got overtaken by a storm, so those need to be cleared out eventually. Or I have just stuff that is in the ground, and I guess like they're done with the season, and there was no succession plan afterwards. So basically what I'm trying to say is that it's space. It's not a ton of space, but if you can get a visual idea of just what this space looks like and the amount, maybe it will also be able to help you figure out how productive your space can be. Now, since I just finished harvesting, there's a lot that was here before that's completely gone out, obviously, but there's a lot that is also still, I would say like 75% there for blooming, and it's going to be perfect timing for when I need them later in the week. So typically I sell my bouquets at the country store from Thursday through Sunday, and my vase arrangement pickup isn't until Friday. So we still got a couple of days for these plants to do their thing with Mother Nature. It's going to get a little bit more warm, so it's actually perfect in terms of just where everything is stage wise, and I still have more than necessary or more than I need. Now, I think one of the fundamentals of growing, especially if you're looking to sell consistently, is being able to have a consistent amount of product. So especially if you're trying to sell wholesale, you're trying to look at high number of quantity of stems, but also high consistency of good stems. And so you do need, I would say, at least a space that's like half of this size to be able to try to attempt that, to provide a variety of blooms for florists. Now, there are plenty of people who grow in a much smaller space. They're still able to do like bucket drops with florists, but I'm talking about going back to the florists consistently with a certain amount of product and variety that they can choose from. All right, so this is the ultimate bounty that I'm bringing to the market tomorrow. I still have to sleeve the ones that are pre-ordered, but let's actually talk a little bit about this. We've got about $415 worth of pre-orders here. So these are stems that have already been basically ordered by florists, and then we've got some stems here that are for market floor. I would say that we probably have about maybe just shy of $600 worth of product over here, but let's actually talk about some of the heavy hitting flowers here that have really pulled their weight in terms of volume. So celosia is obviously one of them. One plant can actually produce a lot of side stems. So you can see that this is celosia Selway. It's actually done a lot better than I thought it would this year. We have a bunch of ageratum. So there are 5 bunches in the pre-order piece, and I think I have 2 extra bunches for market floor. We've got some dahlias here, which, I don't focus a lot on dahlias, but this year I really focus on growing just a few varieties so that it'd be easier for me to sell wholesale. And so it's been a lot easier for me to piece together like a bunch of Cornell Bronze or a bunch of Jowie Winnie, that kind of stuff. We've got some callows over here, which really pulled their weight last market, less so this market because I just sold a bunch last week wholesale for a separate route. We've got a bunch of stock over here. There's still a lot of stock in the ground, which I'm hoping that I can list for next week. This is about 3 bunches over here. I would say the heaviest hitter wholesale has actually been cosmos, which have I think if I run the numbers, have become one of my most profitable crops. And it's just because of how vigorous they are, how cut and come again they are, and really just how sought after they are by event designers. So this is the double click cosmos that I've talked about before. The marigolds are starting to come in spades, and this is just 3 bunches of the white ones. So this is white swan, and then within the white swan train that I got, there were some, I guess, misseeded, more orange ones. It looks like zochi to me. So this is just 4 bunches of marigolds, and it's a ton. We've got some silver shield that's finally coming in. It's only 2 bunches, but you get the point over here. There's actually quite a bit of flowers. And then I would be remiss to say, or if I didn't talk about some of these floret zinnias, I did a video last week just saying, are they worth it? I mean, you can see the majorities are double. They've really matured, and just like, they look so fantastically beautiful for wedding work. So this is alpenglow over here. This is golden hour. So again, tons of layers too. And I'm really excited to get the florist these. Ooh. Over here, being a little bit hidden, is actually a different stock color. So this one I believe is apricot, and it's just got the most lovely blush tones. And then the other thing that I do want to call attention to is tomatoes. I've got a ton of volunteer cherry tomatoes. These vines work really well for design work. So there's 3 bunches of 5 in here, so a total of 15 stems, more dahlias, and you get the point. So there's quite a bit of stems in here. I will actually put the total number of stems that I have here on the screen once I do the math. And so you'll see that it's actually quite a productive area, and I still have so much more that I can continue to cut off of. So we've got a full carload. You can see there's a pretty big car seat over here that takes up about the third of the back, but everything is pretty much stuffed to the brims. So most of the time, my constraint is actually not how many flowers I can grow. It's how many flowers I can fit into this car. It's about like an hour drive. I don't love driving Eric's truck, which is right over there. And even if I drove his truck, you know, he has like a tunnel cover. You don't really want to keep that cover open if you're on the highway. So yeah, I think I could probably fit another bucket up front, but otherwise we are good to pack up and go. Let's hope this thing closes. I'm back from the market for basically the whole day. I was able to harvest at lunch for the country store. It's cool enough right now to be able to do that. The flowers have been conditioning, and now it's time to make those bouquets. Now, because I have that vase arrangement pickup, as well as I'm listing product for the co-op next week, I'm probably not going to be trying to maximize the amount of bouquets I sell through the country store. We're looking at probably about 10 bouquets this weekend max. So I'm going to put in 4 tomorrow, and then probably another like 5 or 6 over the next couple of days. I have another a la carte pickup today. So there's a lot of turnover of flowers right now. And one of it's not even a challenge, but it's just something to be mindful of, is making sure that I have enough for next Wednesday's co-op trip. Since it is quite a long trip, I try to make sure that I have close to at least $500 worth of product to make it worth my time. So I want to make sure that I save enough product for that, but then also still be able to maximize my sales channels on the retail end. I want to spend some time talking a little bit more about the specifics of my flower subscription vase pickup. So this is structured like a CSA, or community supported agriculture program, which basically means that customers pay upfront for a certain amount of arrangements, 4 in this case, and then they pick up afterwards. And the point of a CSA is to actually distribute the risk, so that if I were to have a crop failure, they would actually also take part in that risk and having potentially less flowers, if any flowers at all. And if I have a bounty of flowers, a really great season, then they also get to partake in that upside and potentially get an abundance of blooms. But I operate this like a traditional subscription. So for me, this would be a once a month vase pickup. Now, this is a premium vase pickup. So it is structured as $30 each, and I basically make the arrangement for them in this vase that you can see. It is a white vase, and it's It's a modern style vase, and they get to keep the vase at the end of the subscription, but every week that they come back, they bring back their old vase. So essentially I have 2 sets of the vases. There are only 5 customers that signed up for this. I limited to a very small group because I did not want to spend a ton of time making vase arrangements, but I did want to up my skill in design. So I accepted 5 total subscribers, and that means I have 10 total vases. So at any given time, 5 are out at the customers' houses and 5 are here with me. And at the very end, so this month will be the last pickup for the majority of the customers, they will get to keep these vases. Now, these vases are not very expensive. You can choose to go as low end as you want or as high end as you want. And I felt like I went with an in-between option that made the arrangements look really awesome, but also wasn't a cheap dollar store vase. So if this is something you want to do, I would encourage you to look at vases that are in like the $10 to $15 price point. Price it within your subscription. For me, I made it very clear that this was a bonus add-on, that the vase was on me, again, because I was looking to get more design experience out of this more so than anything else. It's early Friday morning right now. We're actually getting ready to go to chop, but I wanted to make sure that the vases were ready for pickup since they're coming in the afternoon. So I set them on this cart and you'll see what that looks like. Before I show you what they look like, I was really nervous yesterday when I was putting these together because I wasn't sure if I would have enough flowers to make them feel as full as they normally do. Now, these are definitely worth more than what I'm charging for. They're $30. They're really supposed to be valued at like $45, $50. And I made it really clear to the people who purchased that this was also for me to practice. So they're not getting a professionally arranged arrangement, but this is for me to practice throughout the season to up my design skills. Now, I'm really happy with how they turned out. Typically, I have a lot of lilies that helps bulk it up a bit, give it a little bit more height, and give it a lot more interest. But I was able to, I feel, achieve something similar, and I love the color. So without further ado, this is what they look like. It is now the late afternoon. We got back from chop a few hours ago, and I will do an update on E at the end of this video, but it is now time to harvest for tomorrow. So I like harvesting in the late evening whenever possible. This is as close as it's gonna get. I mean, it's like 70 degrees outside, so it's totally fine to harvest. And then afterwards, I do want to talk high level about the productivity piece, including what has been really great for cut and come again productivity when I got things into the ground and those kind of details. So I have finished harvesting. I still have some stems in the cooler from yesterday that we're going to be able to use. So we're going to let these stems condition before I make bouquets. But right now I want to switch gears and go back to this entire concept of just how much productivity can you get from a space like this. So earlier in the video, you'll have seen that I basically produced about 400 stems. That was all harvested around Wednesday. And then I would say that since then, I've harvested an additional 100 stems between between the retail store bouquets, which I didn't get a chance to show you guys because we were in a rush to deliver to them yesterday, and then the CSA vase arrangement. So we're around 500 stems, and then all of the stems that we're going to be making for tomorrow probably is going to be another like 60 stems or so. So now we're about 560 stems, and clearly there is still more left to harvest, and a lot of that will go to next week's florist cooperative market, where I'm hoping to also be able to pump out another like 300 to 400 stems. So you can see that a space like this can actually be pretty productive. Now, I have by no means maximized this space. I did talk earlier in the video about how I had actually let a part of the space just go to rest. I had wood chipped it because it was just too much to keep up with the weeds. This year, in year 3, I am starting to see the benefits of having done no-till. I think that's a separate conversation for whether or not I would start out no-till again, but the point is that I haven't been tilling, and now I feel like the weed management, especially in the aisles, is definitely very much manageable to the point where I can actually open up the rest of the space. The only reason why I wouldn't open it up is actually for tractor purposes, because we can actually get the tractor in and deliver things like compost or like leaves a lot more easier. But what I'm really trying to say is that I have by no means maximized the space, so the space could also be a lot more productive. I also have things like perennials in the ground, which, you know, produce once there's a bit of intercropping, but not to the extent where all of the beds are full. So I think that if I were to really maximize the space, I could probably more than double what I am doing right now, and that is also with some more diligent planting. And when I say diligent planting, I'm talking about making sure that when I get plugs into the ground, they are going to survive, because I've had a lot of crop failures. Part of it is because I've been experimenting with putting things in the height of the summer. Some things I haven't watered as diligently as I should have, and some things I got them into the ground a little bit too late because I was trying to push the envelope to see if I can get them in a bit later to not have to take up so much valuable real estate, right? The point is that I've also had a lot of failures, which means that right now I should actually be having an additional, I would say like 150 stems per week that aren't happening because those were crop failures. But as you can see, even though I've had crop failures, I still have this luxury of having enough to sell, right? So I think that by the time you get to year 3, it's really focusing on what can you do really, really well, making sure that you're doing that, but also taking a little bit of a portion of your space, assuming you have the space, to do a little bit more experimenting, because things like getting in stock this time of year is actually really helpful. I'm the only person who has stock. Everybody loves the smell of stock, and it's just something unique that can differentiate you from others, and also it's just a lot of fun to actually have successes in your experiments. But let's actually take some time right now to talk about 3 crops that have really contributed to the productivity conversation, the ability for me to consistently make bouquets. And let's actually talk about what makes them a little bit different from each other. All 3 are actually cut and come again crops. They are all warm loving annuals. You'll actually find that warm loving annuals tend to do better as cut and come again versus your spring and fall crops, or the cool hardy annuals typically don't give you as great cut and come again type of potential. Obviously, there are exceptions, but for the most part, I feel like warm annuals are really good on that productivity front. So we're going to talk about those 3, and we're going to talk about learnings from myself, and we're actually going to start with a new crop that I've never grown before until this year, and that is ageratum. So you can see over here, I've got a whole row of ageratum, and this ageratum is actually interplanted with other stuff, including some fall mums, some silver shield, echinacea. I was running out of space, so I was kind of just like throwing this anywhere. I think the biggest shock I've had with ageratum is how productive it is. Like, we're talking about one plug sending up anywhere from like 8 to 12 different shoots. So it is highly, highly productive. And this is the thing that I've come to understand or realize about cut and come again, is that not all cut and come again crops are created equal, in the sense that some crops will actually give you multiple stems from the onset, which means that you'll have multiple blooms at once. Some need a little bit more of like that first hard pinch before they send up those side shoots, kind of like zinnias. And some of them, even though they may not send up those side shoots immediately, have a really fast turnaround time to producing more blooms. And all of that is really important, because if you have a small space, you might actually want to focus on those really heavy producer cut and come again flowers to make sure that you have a certain volume that is consistent. So with ageratum, I did find that it was a little bit longer in terms of days to maturity versus some of the other stuff that I put into the ground around the same time. But overall, I mean, it's flowering at a time that I want it to flower, which is really all that I want. But let me show you up close what this ageratum looks like. So here we have my bushes of ageratum. I'm going to see if I can show you what one plant is. Okay, so I don't know if you can tell from the camera over here, but this is one plant that has branched out into two different pieces, I guess, and each part of the two has 6 stems. So all of them are shooting up long stems that are usable. Some of them have thinner stems, like this one's a little bit thinner, but it's still very, very sturdy. Some of them are a little bit thicker like this. And the thing about ageratum is that you have to wait to harvest it. It's definitely when you want to do the wiggle test. So in this case, you can see that the central head is actually fine, but this is flopping. So if I were in a pinch and I had to harvest this, I would actually cut off the side, because this would totally flop. But something like this, once it starts getting these little side frills, I guess, I don't know what you call them, but this is actually also called a floss flower, and I think that's probably why, because the little sides look like floss. This is perfectly mature for you to harvest. If you get a good stem, you'll actually get it to branch out a bit more, and it fills a little bit more. And you can see over here, look at that little grasshopper just hanging out on the ageratum. But I've got a ton, and I would say that the first week I was able to harvest 40, second week 50 stems. This week I'm projecting I'm going to be able to harvest 60 stems for the co-op, and that is in addition to probably an additional 20 stems that I'm harvesting for a la carte and country store bouquets. So very, very productive. This was a tray of plugs that I bought from Farmer Bailey's, and if I had to do it again, I would buy that tray and I would actually potentially plant it in June instead of July. And I think that it is a great intercropper with other things. So I will definitely be growing ageratum again. And I also think that this purple bluish color is one that is really hard to find in other places. Or it's hard to find in other flowers, but it also pairs really well color-wise with many different palettes. So it takes you from summer to fall really elegantly. Next up, I want to talk about another crop that was new to me in terms of growing for cut flower production, and that is marigold. I've grown marigold before as a companion plant for tomatoes, but never like a tray of 125 for cut flower production. And I love it. I think that marigolds are amazing, and it's definitely something I would grow again. I specifically got plugs to come in during July, and I put them in the ground it was like mid-July, specifically because I didn't want beetles to potentially eat them. Now, marigolds are typically pretty good with pests. I mean, you can still get like caterpillars and things like that on them, but for the most part, they've been really good with pests, as well as the ageratum. So I saw that marigolds did really well at my cooperative last year. I was kind of surprised. It was like the orange, the Xochi orange, the yellows, they did really well, but for whatever reason, no one really grew the white. I think there's another flower farmer who grew the white, but it wasn't as productive. And so when I had the chance to pick out which color, I was like, let's try a white swan, because I think that would be a really versatile color for both retail and for florists. And I was right, because whenever I list these bunches, they actually get snapped up. they actually grew really quickly. So these were in the ground in mid-July, and by like, I would say 40 days later, we were starting to see buds. And let me show you what I'm talking about when I say buds. So I started seeing buds like this after 40 days. My biggest lesson with marigolds is that you would actually benefit from pinching them. And that is because when you don't pinch them, you get this one giant central stem that is too short for you to just cut off of. So then you have to end up cutting deeper, and then you're sacrificing all of these side buds. So what that means is that it's actually less productive than it looks. I mean, it's really bushy over here, but at this point, you know, these buds haven't actually yet opened up. You might get one where I'm trying to find like, where's a good example? See, like I've cut off most of them, so you can't even see them as examples. But like this one over here, right? This one's another central one. At least this side one is starting to open up. So I'm at the point now where I'm sacrificing the central one to be able to get 2 stems off of each of these sides. So in the future, I would pinch the marigolds. The marigolds, I haven't netted. I think next year I might actually corral because they do have a tendency to lean. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the results of not netting them and planting them this way. Now you're going to see that there's a couple of more like gold yellow type of marigolds in here. I think these were just like misseeded in that tray. I'm actually really happy to get them because again, like this is more fall-esque colors. It combines really well with those fall tones like burgundy. You know, you can put 2 of these different colored marigolds together in a bouquet, start putting in some fall tones with that blue ageratum, and it looks really, really pretty. So would definitely grow marigolds again. What I would do differently next year, in addition to pinching, is I might actually grow a second succession. So we'll see how far this takes me this season. But one of the main dates that people should think about hitting, especially if they're in an area with a large Hispanic population, is Dia de los Muertos, which is Day of the Dead. And that is basically like around the Halloween time frame. I think it's the day before Halloween or it's day of Halloween. But anyway, marigolds are a really, really big flower on that festival. There's also Diwali. So culturally, marigolds actually have a lot of potential, and farmers who have focused on those holidays have done really well with marigolds. All right, before we get on to the third crop, I do want to mention that for all of my Patreon supporters, I will be posting over the next few weeks detailed posts around these crops in addition to other crops. What I've been most interested in this year is figuring out, what does productivity mean to me? Now, some people define it as just like how many stems can you harvest off of 1 square foot area. This year, because of our family issues, I have really needed this flexibility of having a crop bloom for a longer time horizon, or just being able to be harvested over like a 3 to 4 week window. So there are certain crops that may not be as productive from a cut and come again standpoint, but give me a much more generous harvest window. And that is actually really, really important to me. That might also be important to you if you are someone who has a job where you're traveling a lot, or maybe you're a nurse and you work like 4 days on, 3 days off, and you can't go out to your garden and harvest, right? Like in that case, having something that is going to blow open like a dahlia and not really give you that much sellable stems if you're harvesting them at the wrong time may not be a good fit for you. So I've been trying to redefine what productivity looks like for me. And of course, in those Patreon posts, I will also talk about how many stems I've sold, popularity amongst florists, price per stem, and all of that stuff. So that's for like the nerdy stuff for people who want to support. And I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who has joined. We're close to 100 members, and my goal is to get you guys some more quality long form content out there that's really hard to find elsewhere. I'm now at a place where I feel like I'm answering questions that I had before that I couldn't find. So that will be my forum to share with you. But now, without further ado, let's talk about the third crop that has become my most profitable crop. I did run the numbers, by the way, and it is cosmos. And so you might be surprised to hear this, because you can see behind me, these are the same cosmos that got flattened by a windstorm or rain windstorm. So obviously need to corral them in the future. But despite letting so many go to waste, still a highly profitable crop. And that's because unlike marigolds and ageratum, bought these from seed, 2 seed packets. They were from Johnny's. Johnny's isn't the most cheap place for seeds, but you're talking about, like, I don't know, it was like $7 a packet for a ton of seeds, and I direct sow them. So direct sowing is going to cut down on the cost of your labor. And I literally just like went in a row and just direct seeded them. They sprouted within like a day or two, even in the hot heat, and they just started putting on growth. The main thing I learned about cosmos was that whoever said they don't like fertile soil, they don't like to be fertilized, was wrong, because they really benefited from being in a highly nutrient dense compost. Like, this is compost that we got from our neighbor. He has chickens, so he's aged his compost really well. He even gets like used grape skins from a local vineyard. Point is, it's very high quality compost. And this was a bed where I had some failed ranunculus and anemones, and for whatever reason I decided to put cosmos in there. And I will tell you that these cosmos are ridiculous. Like, the stem sturdiness or the stem girth is just unreal. And what that means is that when these are at their prime and I'm selling them to florists, they are actually in a tier above a general average cosmo, to the point where when I brought my last bunches of cosmos to the co-op, one of the co-op board members was like, how much are you charging for these? Because these are not the same type of quality cosmos as the ones that we're all listing. Like, you need to charge higher. And I basically asked her, I was like, what would you do differently with my cosmos versus the cosmos that you grow? And she was like, well, your cosmos can be used in installations. They've got really long, fat, sturdy stems, multiple bloom heads per stem. So you've obviously got a very staggered vase life. It's very easy to work with as a designer because you've got the flexibility. So up your price. And as a result, like, I'm selling cosmos basically at $1.40 a stem. I don't have enough cosmos to basically sell. Like, every single time I bring cosmos to the market floor, they're gone. In pre-sales right now, I only listed 2 bunches, gone immediately. And I think that's one of the challenges with cosmos, is that the weather is still so variable right now. That's hard for me to predict just how many bunches I'm going to have. Like, if I were to take an educated guess, something like this should be ready for next Wednesday. Something like this will probably be a little too blown open by next Wednesday. But now that we're getting into cooler nights, it's kind of hard to predict, right? But I have the safety of knowing that typically florists do like working with cosmos. So if you're selling to florists, cosmos should definitely be on the list. And let's actually talk a little bit about the cut and come again productivity on cosmos. And I'm going to switch the camera around to show you. So I can confidently say that compared to year 1, this is what good looks like when it comes to cosmos. Like, you can see this one plant over here has this really strong central stem, and it's got a ton of side shooting stems. And what's great about this plant is that you've got over a dozen shoots that are all going to flower at the same time. So what I normally do when I harvest is one bunch of 10 stems I'll cut over here. So they've got this one bunch. I'll probably take off some of these little scragglers with multiple bloom heads. And then I'm able to harvest off of the side over here, which also has multiple bloom heads. And essentially this one plant has become one bunch. So this one plant has gone from cents and seed to anywhere from like $12 to $14, depending on what your market commands for high quality cosmos. And I'll tell you that in year 1, when I grew bad, scraggly cosmos, I was not able to get this level of productivity, meaning I got like a couple of scrawny stems. They were kind of just like flopping over. Some of them weren't even usable because the stems were just not thick enough. And I really do attribute the health of this cosmos to the soil health, because I don't actually fertilize the cosmos with Neptune's fertilizer, which is my fertilizer of choice. I've been working on soil health. And so this area has had food waste dug underneath it. I I basically direct seeded above it, so it's growing in good soil. And I would say that if I had any recommendations to grow good cosmos, it would be to make sure that your soil is good. I really do think that if you took the 3 crops I just talked about, ageratum, marigolds, cosmos, and then added something like dahlias into the mix, you can make really great bouquets, or add something like sunflowers, right? So these 3 crops, if you bought a full tray, you would likely be able to have a full month to be able to cut from and make bouquets. Now, of course, if it's a tray of like a single color, your customers might get tired of having the same color type of bouquet mix. But even if you were to switch up the focal flower from dahlias to sunflowers, you could really change the look and feel of a bouquet and be able to provide that level of consistent high volume production. At this point, I would say that we probably have another 2-3 weeks left before the majority of the field is done. Now, I have some fall mums that are experimental. Part of the reason why we're going to be done about 2 to 3 weeks is because I never got to the full succession planting in July that I was going to do, since my daughter got diagnosed. And that's totally fine. We're going to have an earlier end to the season. We're going to have a really busy fall. So for those of you who ordered corms from me, they are starting to ship out. Some of you might have already gotten them by the time we air this video. We're getting our next shipment of ranunculus corms in. We still have a few left. Most are honestly sold out. So I'm sorry, guys, if you were looking for corms. We still have a bunch of anemone corms, especially the Nero and the fuchsia colors, which are both really, really pretty. So if you want to grab some, head on over to the b.a.r.e Flower Farm store. But yeah, like, I mean, we're really enjoying this time of year right now. It's just nice weather. We're not battling the weeds as vigorously as we are in the summer. And it really reinforces why I take off summer, to maximize that time in June to prepare the field, or sorry, to maximize that time in July to prepare the field for blooming around this time. And if I did it right, there would have been another succession to take us closer to frost. But let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments below. Your experience with growing those 3 flowers I talked about. What are your favorite heavy hitters? I would love to know that. And if you're interested, stay tuned for an update on E.
Oh my God.